Lopez. I'm best known for horror, humor, artwork, and hats. But my writing also contains other elements, including fantasy and adventure, things like that. And I write both poetry and prose. I have collections of short stories, collections of poems, novels, you name it, I write it. Today I'm going to share some readings from two of my books. This one is The Fairy Fly. It's a fantasy adventure. It's a novel, and it's illustrated. And I'm going to read you chapter 4. The main character is a young spider who's trying to find his way through the world and trying to find his way back home. And he meets these eccentric characters, including Hit Mantis and an evil queen who's a black widow, and some really other odd ones. And he makes friends with a human too. And it's a lot of fun. It has humor and adventure, a lot of things going. So I'll read you a sample from it. Home seemed impossibly removed, the road unfathomable to a wee arachnid unworldly as he. Yet that became Spider's single obsessive goal for this rigorous day. And what better way to return to his beginnings than by following his own footsteps? The homesick hunter backtracked down a blinding lane, waded the scorched, cemented sands of a desert, then strode into the shade, where jangling and concussions reassured him he was heading the right direction. All of the insects flittering about had given his stomach, in his chest, an uncomfortable case of cramps. It occurred that he was starved. He hadn't caught a bite in ages. The spider's heart, in his abdomen, ached with a profounder hollowness. He felt like laughing and weeping at once. It was weird. He needed to search for the elusive thread of truth to unravel this puzzle. Maybe his mother could explain why he was so conflicted. He hoped she would have a clue, a snippet of wisdom, and to be honest, he could use a hug. With daredevilish bravado, he aimed for the other end of the stomping field. Eyes popping, he wended through the tumult unscathed, but then squatted in dejection, burdened by the weight of his quandary. How could he find his way home when everything was so hazy? And he wasn't sure where he had been. More clanging. Shoals of humans merged into the walls like schools of fish in the Martian reeds of a river. He had never been to a river, but he had viewed such wonders of the world in a magic window at home. This place is a few legs short of a bug, thought Spider. The arachnid plodded, sluggish and frustrated, willpower deflated by staggering odds. He needed to go home to get clarity, but to get home, he needed clarity too. Palps wagsome, he poked his noseless mug into a chamber full of rustles and squeaks. The scenario sparked a familiar twinge. Had he been there before? He couldn't be certain. He'd forget his head if it weren't connected to his thorax. The spider's abdomen sneezed. Dust congested the air, the same stuff that had clumped his leg hairs until the soak in the pool. He ventured on, wincing, refusing to set another foot in that toxic wasteland. The wall next to him receded to a niche. Distracted, he climbed to slurp water from the alpine basin of the structure. Then chided himself for making new footprints when he should be retracing the old. He was only making more footsteps to follow, which would get him nowhere. The abyss at his core echoed. "Who's there?" a voice hailed. "Friend or foe?" A brown, white splotched Weber, spider size, hung on a strand in a corner. "Or feast? How many legs do you have?" "Are you talking to me?" Liquid drizzled off Spider's palps. "Do you see anyone else?" The Weber propped 8 feet against his corner and shoved, forelegs crossed, eyes intently trained on the passerby. He oscillated toward him. Well, well, you're not a gadfly. A gadabout, perhaps. What do you want? The despondent nomad was unaccustomed to so much entrance. Jews, gossip, the grapevine, prattled the nearsighted local. Come closer, tell me the latest buzz, and I'll trade you a piece of advice. Look, I'm kind of busy, okay? Retorted the tourist crabbily. I don't have time to chat with the web spinners. A tick later, he asked, did you say advice? Oh, I get it. You think you're too good to talk to me. Hunters are all alike, thinking you're smarter than everybody else because you travel. When, more accurately, you're as dumb as the dirt. Whereas I have plenty of time to contemplate, speculate, and deliberate. The Weber budged hard, swinging face to face with Spider. I have the entire day to think, and I think you stink. I do? I just took a bath. It dawned on the jumper that his leg was being pulled. Wait one moth-winding minute, just a silk-nodding second. Hold your horseflies, hang on to your sticky string. Weber frowned, grinning eye to eye despite their differences. You're no hunter, that's what I think. You're a skulker. One of those web weavers who hides in a hole and pounces if their tripwire wiggles. A menial lower-class platform builder. What are you trying to pull? Masquerading as something you're not. You can't all be high society. I suppose you want a vagrant or thug like I first assumed. The spiderling shuffled his feet in dismay. A web spider? How could that be? You must be mistaken, you know. Oh, I think not. I am seldom, if ever, mistaken, boasted the Weber, exuding a haughty huff. What did your mother do for a living? I'm not sure. I was in the egg sac with my brothers and sisters mostly. It was pretty packed. They were plumper and picked on me, told me run when I hatched. Mother gave me a hug as I wobbled out last. I never saw her again after she waved goodbye. I'm trying to find her now. The Webster pouted in empathy. Then his sagging mouth etched a firm line. We all have our sob stories, kid. I was forsaken too, but I know who I am. Think, boy. In an exaggerated manner, as if addressing a dunce, he interrogated, was there a carpet of cobwebs? Spider shrugged. I can't remember. If you're so absent-minded, you'll probably forget this conversation, and then what will be the point? We might as well not even have it. The aloof arachnid snubbed the visitor by turning his back. I've got news for you. Well, what is it? The Weber swiveled his necklace cephalon. Leaping up the wall, Spider twined the brown spider in silk like the mummified bugs adorning his tapestry. They who live by the web get tied by the web. And spiders can't smell. Hooting, he departed. The trust arachnid unmuzzled his mouth. Oh yeah? It must be the white stripes then. And beware the sweeper, buddy. And that's the end of that chapter, and there is an illustration of the Weber all tied up. And this is the latest book. It's a poetry collection called The Queen of Hags. It has a variety of dark verse, humorous, serious. It has prose introducing each chapter. It's very strange. So I'm going to read one of the poems just to give you a little idea of the type of strangeness you might encounter. This one is in a chapter that's about hats, and it's called Left Feet. Along the grimmest, the narrowest, as well as the village's shadiest lane, a purple hat shop stood wedged between a coffin maker and home for the insane. Not that every hat was purple, but the shop wore a lovely hue. Jelly sandwiched by dreariness and drab, it bore a striking contrast to the gleaming caskets, screaming crazies on the burrow's darker side, across the tracks, around the bend. In the town's deepest down, it did abide, which was the heart of local commerce, the hamlet's only street in fact. And this shop was named Left Feet, its proprietors both quite whacked. From whiffing glue, the story goes, for they crafted their hats by hand, an array of exceptional lids. A shame there wasn't more demand. Few villagers adopted the habit. Locals favored hoods instead, being wicked or devil worshippers, with no space for a hat on their head. Good or evil, they spurned the shop, crossing the road merely to avoid it, which drove Deirdre and Devon monster, being a trifle paranoid of it. The scheming crackle couple deemed that every lid should be half price. None could resist a sensational deal. They didn't have to ask folks twice. It was as if there were a fever, and wearing hats became contagious. Soon the shelves would be stripped bare, the buying spree a bit outrageous. Then and there the fun began, for the madcaps had all been cursed, making occupants turn duck-mouthed, faces stuck with the lips rather pursed. Of course, there could be no happy ending, since the hat fetish soon wore off, and the hoodies reverted to custom, following a ceremonial hat doff. The crackles flipped their lids even further, tipped their hats to the ladies and fellas, then moved to the lost city of Atlantis, where now they sell umbrellas. And that's the end of that one. So that's all I'm going to share right now. You'll have to read it to find out more. Any questions? Yes?
Where did you think of your inspiration for the spider one?
Well, I am an animal lover, and my sons are as well, and they've been taking care of spiders for many years. And so we just have them around. Our house is decorated by them, in fact. They're really crafty and very nice when you get to know them. So, but, well, I actually wrote that book about 15 years ago. I did the first draft of it, and it just evolved from, I learned what a fairy fly was. It's a really tiny little wasp, and I thought, wow, that's a great character for a fantasy story. And I wanted to put spiders in it out of respect for them. And one of the main things that I wanted to do with this story was get people to consider the lives that are going on around them, and to look at the world differently through smaller eyes and see it, the way spiders and insects do, and that they do have a world too. They do have lives, and I want the world to be more full of respect, between humans and other creatures. That's an important thing in the book and in my life. So I wrote it, and in the beginning there is a piece that mentions about that. So, any other questions?
Did you have to study a lot of etymology to get everything correct?
Oh yes, I did quite a bit of research, yeah. Always trying to get little details, make sure everything was accurate. Yeah, I do try to get it as close as I can. And sometimes you have to stretch things a little, but I did try to find a balance where it wasn't, nobody would say, oh, that's not accurate. Yeah. So it is pretty accurate. how I put myself in the spider's position. There are some really creative characters in it, different types of insects and things, but I kept them more or less realistic while making them also characters. It has a lot of humor too, so it is a fantasy, but it is accurate as much as I can.
You said you keep spiders in the house.
Yeah.
Are they in special containers, or they just stay
No,
when they want
we
to?
just let them be, you know, just spiders that are there. We just let them be in, try to stay out of their way, and it's always interesting to observe the life around us. So we just don't feel like, oh, a spider, you know, step on it. And so it's about respect. We try to do that with ants and different things, you know. So we're vegetarians too. One son is a vegan, so. Yes.
Have you gotten bit by one of the spiders?
No. It's possible, maybe one harmless type, not anything serious.
So no poisonous spiders.
Yeah.
How many spiders do you have at your house? Like larger, like
We're past the age.
Well, they are, we actually have one about this big above the kitchen sink.
Oh.
She's pretty nice, but she comes out and she'll say hi in the mornings. And it's interesting. So you kind of get to know them a little, you know. We try not to disturb them. It's just, we let them be. Yes?
I didn't really have a question per se. I just really wanted to compliment you on the fact that you wrote about things that most people don't think about, because I always sort of might asking my mum to spot a fly, but that fly could have had brothers and a family to go to, and
Yeah.
I like the way that you portrayed it. That
Well, thank you. Thank you. Good to hear. Anyone else? So we're good here? Okay. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.